The word Laura was once spoken by my husband, Ethan, with a tenderness that encircled my heart each morning. His voice was as gentle as the dawn, and he assured me that I was his entire universe. It was during the calm nights that he would whisper it into my ear, his breath being warm, and it would make me feel as if nothing could touch us. This evening, however, my name cut through the darkness in a manner that shattered that illusion. It was not with love that it did so. Rather, it was with a cold, unfamiliar poison that left me gasping for air. In the middle of the night, I awoke to find the bed next to me chilly and devoid of any occupants. There was no sign of Ethan. My initial thought was completely harmless. It's possible that he was searching for a glass of water or using the restroom downstairs. After rolling over and getting ready to fall back asleep, I was startled by a tiny sound that broke the peace. It was a low, purposeful whisper that was sharp in the stillness of our home. As I sat up, my heart pounded and every nerve in my body was on edge. Ethan's voice, cautious and in control, could be heard coming from a specific location further down the hallway. After that, words that made my blood freeze. It is still the case that she has no suspicions. When I found myself unable to breathe, it was as if an unseen hand had wrapped itself around my chest and squeezed out the air. That nagging worry that I had suppressed, the way that Ethan would swiftly lock his phone whenever I entered the room, and the hazy reasons about staying up late at work were all things that gave me pause. I felt a tidal wave of anxiety and uncertainty wash over me as it continued to surge back. As I slipped out of bed, my hands shook and my bare feet made contact with the cold wooden floor. With each step, the feeling of dread that was building up in my gut became even more intense. A sliver of light was able to make its way through the breach in the door of his home office, and I followed the whispers until I reached it. With my heart beating like a loud drum in my ears, I pressed myself against the wall and continued to hold my breath as I strained to hear more. "Yeah, I've already transferred it," Ethan answered in a low, deliberate tone, imitating the manner in which a predator would approach its prey. "All is going according to plan. It's almost over." The muscles in my throat became so stiff that I could hardly swallow. What transferred was it? That which is almost finished? I was terrified that he would be able to hear the pounding of my heart. Then there were footsteps. A wave of panic swept over me, and I hastily returned to my bed, putting the covers over my head just as the door to my bedroom began to creak open. With the ease of someone who hadn't merely been planning in the shadows, Ethan glided in and moved with the ability to move with ease. As I closed my eyes and made an effort to maintain a steady breathing pattern, I pretended to be asleep, despite the fact that my head was filled with questions. As he lay down next to me, the mattress began to sink, and his calm breathing began to make a cruel mockery of the turmoil that was screaming through me. Something nefarious was being concealed by him, and it was directly related to me in every way there was. I sneaked into the kitchen the following morning when Ethan was sleeping and I was holding my phone in my hands, which were shaking. I had never really given much thought to our financial situation. I put my complete faith in Ethan to handle all of the financial matters, including the bills, investments, and savings. Nevertheless, that trust felt like a noose to me today. The moment I launched the banking application, my eyes began to scan the transactions, and each figure felt like a knife to my abdomen. In the past 3 months, withdrawals of $500, $1,000, $200, $750, and $2,000 have all been made. The quantities were not enormous, but they were sufficient to indicate that something was extremely wrong. As the panic began to claw my breast, I tried to calm myself by gripping the kitchen counter with my knuckles, which were white. This was not for paying bills or making investments. There was no trace of the money. It had simply vanished into a blank that I was unable to grasp. Is it really too early to check the bank account? My thoughts were shattered by the sound of Ethan's voice. When I turned around, I saw him resting against the doorway, scratching his neck with a slumbering smile that did not reach his eyes. However, when his eyes briefly shifted to my phone, a short but evident shade of stress appeared on his face. I said, "Just checking in at random. while attempting to keep my voice calm in spite of the tempest that was raging inside of me. Several of the withdrawals are ones that I am not familiar with. In a manner that seemed both casual and scripted, he strolled up to the table and poured himself a cup of coffee. "Oh, you mean those? Just a few little investments that I ought to have mentioned before." With his eyes avoiding mine, he took a sip of his beverage, his smile being a thin veneer over something more sinister. Ethan was a master of deception, and his charm was a weapon that I had once fallen for. I studied his face for a breach in his mask, but he showed no signs of weakness. While I pretended to acknowledge his deception by nodding my head, I found myself experiencing a new feeling. Rather than merely having doubts, I had a terrible certainty that he was betraying me in ways that I was not yet able to comprehend. In the evening, I kept a close eye on him like a hawk. He was continuously texting, and he always put his phone face down as if he was trying to keep a secret about something. In order to accept calls, he would step outdoors, his voice subdued and filled with a sense of urgency that he did not want me to hear. After that, my opportunity presented itself. During his announcement that he was going to take a shower, Ethan stood up and did something that he had never done before. On the table, he left his phone unprotected and unattended. Despite the fact that my heart was racing, I made a conscious effort to remain calm and count the seconds until I was certain that he had left. A fresh message appeared on the screen of the phone as I picked it up, and my hands began to shake as I did so. "Take care of her, Iliamaro." "What's the message?" "Just make sure that she does not gain any knowledge. It's almost over." My hold became more firm, and my heartbeat paused for a brief period. Who was that Iliamaro, after all? What exactly did it mean to be so close to completing something? As I put the phone down, I felt a chilling sense of dread rush over me, moving deep into my bones. The sound of the shower was a faint hum in the background. Ethan was not merely concealing something. Rather, he was conspiring against me, and his scheme was almost finished being implemented. Like I put the phone back where it had been, my hands began to shake like if they had come into contact with something deadly. My head was ablaze with the words, and I vowed to myself that she would remain in the shadows. It was my husband, the guy I had sworn to love for all of eternity, who was plotting a betrayal that had the potential to completely destabilize my life. As the water in the bathroom continued to stream, I made sure to keep my breathing steady. I only had a few minutes to take action, to save myself before he came back, before his scheme could consolidate its hold on me. In the morning after the previous day, Ethan behaved as if the world had not changed beneath my feet. As he placed a cup of coffee in front of me, his grin was warm but hollow. It was a show that I would later realize was not genuine. As he inquired about the employment situation, his concern was dripping with dishonesty, and each word served as a reminder of his dishonesty. Despite the fact that my heart was heavy with the weight of what I knew, I mustered a feeble grin. "Fine," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. In spite of the fact that every fiber of my being was screaming to confront him, I refrained from doing so because I was aware that I needed to plan ahead. Putting his phone face down as he normally does, he called out to Laura, "I believe that we ought to reorganize our financial situation a little bit, just as a precaution, because you never know what life might throw at us." My eyes narrowed, but I managed to keep my voice steady, which helped me conceal the anger that was growing up inside of me. "May I ask what you mean?" He stated it in a fluid manner, each word well picked, like a chess move in a game that I hadn't noticed we were playing. He suggested that we should consolidate our assets when he said it. In the event that something occurs, it will be simpler to handle. The paperwork will be taken care of by me. All you need to do is sign it. Despite the fact that the warmth was not helping to defrost the ice that was in my veins, I strengthened my grip on my coffee cup. I had been anticipating this moment, sensing that his plan was going to be carried out like a trap. He believed that he could influence me and make it appear as though it was a straightforward step, but I was not naive. My mind was racing as I smiled and gently nodded my head. "I think that makes sense. Would you be able to show me the documents first?" His eyes flashed a momentary look of surprise. He hadn't anticipated that I would agree with him so readily. However, he quickly recovered and nodded with the ease that he had become accustomed to. I didn't wait for soon because I knew I would have them ready in a short amount of time. When Ethan went for work, I immediately contacted Anna, who is both my lawyer and my best friend from college. My voice was shaking with the sense of urgency that I felt. I had to take precautions to safeguard myself before he made his next move, since I couldn't allow him to outmaneuver me. The terrifying message from Iliamaro, the strange withdrawals, and the whispers in the night were all things that I poured out as I poured out everything. I was anchored by Anna's sense of peace as she listened in silence. After I had done, her voice remained calm but demanding. "Laura, you must instantly transfer your valuables to a new location." During the entire night, as I lay awake and watched Ethan sleep next to me, I couldn't help but think about it. His very existence was a betrayal. I was able to transform my dread into action after hearing Anna say it, which strengthened my commitment. She went on to say that we would establish a trust. All valuable items should be transferred into your name and placed beneath it. Ethan will not be able to get his hands on a single penny. Despite the anxiety that was eating away at my heart, I commanded with a firm voice, "Do it." There was a tremendous pressure on me from the weight of losing everything that I had worked for. The completion of everything took place in fewer than 3 days. All of the assets, including the apartment, the savings accounts, and the investment shares, were safeguarded and kept out of Ethan's grasp. Regardless of the methods he employed, he was unable to take anything away from me. After a few days had passed, he arrived home early, sat opposite me with an air of importance, and his eyes shone with a self-assurance that caused my stomach to churn. It seemed clear to me that the time had come. He started by putting a stack of documents on the table, and his voice was measured as he described Laura. "Now is the time for a serious conversation." Although I was experiencing a whirlwind of feelings on the inside, I kept my heart steady as I looked at the paperwork. I was prepared. "What exactly is it?" He uttered it with a calm and rehearsed tone, as if he had practiced the words 100 times. "I want a divorce," he said. "I believe that it is for the best. We are no longer together. I do not want the situation to become much more tense." Although my heart was hurting from the realization that everything was over, I lifted an eyebrow to signify that I was not surprised. In actual honesty, he paused for a fraction of a second, a crack appearing in his facade, but then he continued. "Yes, this is the proper method to do things." I refrained from speaking, allowing the moment to unfold, and allowing him to experience the significance of his own words. After that, I pushed the papers in his direction once more. "There is something that you ought to be aware of before we proceed with this discussion." He grimaced, his self-assurance beginning to slip. "What exactly is it?" My voice was clear and purposeful, and each word was a dagger. I met his gaze before speaking. "All of my valuables have already been relocated." Tension grew thicker in the air, until it became as heavy as a storm cloud. When Ethan finally came to terms with the situation, he froze, his eyes widened, and his jaw tightened. "What is it? You can't take anything away from me right now, can you?" I continued, maintaining a steady tone, despite the fact that my heart was pounding with a mixture of terror and triumph. "Legal safeguards are in place for everything. All of the assets, including the apartment, the money, and the investments, are safe." Despite his inability to suppress his anger, Ethan remained mute, his hands squeezing into fists and his face twitching with hatred. He had not anticipated this, and the look of surprise that appeared in his eyes was a little victory. I stood there, meeting his shocked look with a grin that was composed, despite the fact that I was shaking on the inside due to the weight of what I had done. I must say, "Ethan, you were correct about one thing. Nobody is able to accurately forecast what will take place." Although he did not answer, I could tell that his mind was racing as he deliberated over his next move and looked for a means to recover control of the situation. The power had shifted, and for the first time, I was in control. Because he was holding the divorce form with such a firm grasp that his knuckles became white, Ethan remained silent for a whole minute. Even though his wrath was evident and a storm was forming behind his eyes, he made a concerted effort to keep his composure, as if he was still in control of the situation. In spite of the fact that the weight of his treachery was still heavy in my chest, I straightened my coat while my pulse was hammering with a mixture of elation and lingering anxiety. If there is nothing else, I believe that we are finished with this. As a predator who was cornered but still deadly, he drew a deep breath and forced a smile that did not reach his eyes. As he spoke to Laura, his tone was low and piercing, cutting like a razor. He continued, "We'll see each other in court for sure. You won't be able to get away with this easily, either." At the same time that I was holding his eyes, I smirked and refused to let him see the glimmer of terror that his words had started. "So go ahead and give a shot." I went out of the living room, with a sense of triumph running through me, but I was aware that the fight was not yet finished. After a period of 3 days, Ethan's attorney sent a substantial packet containing a formal divorce petition. The petition demanded 50% of all assets, including my apartment, 50% of our joint accounts, and even a monthly allowance. The petition also stated that I had compelled him to give up his career in order to support our marriage. I couldn't help but chuckle bitterly, the brazenness of his falsehoods wounding me worse than I had anticipated. Never before had Ethan made any kind of sacrifice. I had been the one who had to shoulder the financial burden of our existence together, devoting my entire myself to the pursuit of our common goals, while he had been plotting behind my back. Even though he had nothing to lose, he desired everything. Instantaneously, I dialed Anna's number, my voice shaking with a mixture of rage and resolve. While I was looking over the pile of papers, I said that we have a problem for sure. A new wound is required for each one. She gave a quiet chuckle, which was her comma's lifeblood. "I'm going to guess that Ethan is not going to back down." To which I responded with a sigh, "Of course not," as my fingertips traced the borders of the pages. In addition to the apartment and support payments, he wants 50% of my assets. The tone of Anna's voice was filled with contempt as she scoffed. "Do you seriously believe that he has a chance? Instead, he will use every tactic he has at his disposal in an effort to wear you down." "Then we fight," I murmured, maintaining a firm voice despite the knot of anxiety that was forming in my gut. The weight of his betrayal was crushing harder with each passing instant. Anna's response, which was furious and ignited a spark of hope within me, was that it was time for us to demonstrate to him that he had chosen the wrong opponent. In the following 4 days, Anna and I were sitting in her law office, going through the case file. Each and every detail served as a reminder of the life that I had believed I had made with Ethan. While she was putting the folder down with a resolute thud, she stated that he did not have a chance of winning. "You transferred your assets prior to him filing for bankruptcy. Both legally and in terms of the support request, he does not have any grounds to make it. Your salary has always been the most important factor." As I let out a sigh, a sense of relaxation mixed with the growing sense of unease that had been my constant companion. Then, my phone began to ring, and the screen began to light up with a message from a number that I did not recognize. "Laura, you need to be careful since Ethan does not follow the rules." Despite the fact that I was experiencing a shiver and my heart was beating as I glanced at the words, I managed to put the fear aside. I could not allow it to pull me down. Finally, 3 days later, there was a change at the workplace. Strange looks were given to me by my co-workers, and their murmurs followed me about like shadows. Until my assistant, Rachel, strolled into my office with a worried expression on her face, I was convinced that I was imagining it. My nerves were raw from the lack of sleep I had been experiencing. A printed piece was placed on my desk by her, as she informed me that there was something that I needed to see. It was a post on an anonymous site about a chief financial officer who stole money from the company in order to conceal it from her spouse when they were going through a divorce. "Are you able to look at this matter?" Hundreds of comments are included below, one of which is eerily particular. I am aware of who it is. My identity, Laura A.T., was now publicly known to the entire globe, and it had been twisted into a deception that had the potential to destroy everything I had worked for. With a fiery and unyielding intensity, rage raged in my chest. In spite of the turmoil that was occurring inside of me, I remarked in a chilly tone, "Ethan is behind this." Concern could be seen in Rachel's eyes as she nodded her head. "If this goes viral, there is no question that it will destroy your reputation." Even though my hands were shaking with anger, I forced myself to remain cool by taking a deep breath. Due to the fact that my career was the one thing I had built with my own strength, I could not allow Ethan to destroy it. I grabbed my phone and exclaimed, "I need to see Anna right now." My determination was so strong that it overpowered my fear. We are not going to allow him to get away with this matter. During that evening, I had a meeting with Anna, during which I revealed the most recent betrayal, my voice quivering with a mixture of fury and hurt. As she frowned, her eyes became more narrow. Attempting to destroy his reputation is his goal. When you lose your composure and make a mistake, he wants you to do it. My voice was solid as I stated, "I won't," despite the fact that my heart was aching under the weight of Ethan's unrelenting attacks. What does the plan work? With determination, Anna's eyes shone brightly. First, we will send a letter requesting that you stop what you are doing. We intend to file a lawsuit against him for defamation and malicious damage to your reputation if he continues to spread lies. It was as if a glimmer of hope, a fire that was sparking within me, was destroying the terror that I had. It was a mistake for Ethan to believe that he could successfully break me with falsehoods. The jaw was set as I nodded. Let's get it done. While she was in Anna's office 3 days later, she slipped a document over the table while maintaining a solemn demeanor. In a lawsuit that he has just filed, Ethan accuses you of committing financial fraud. I froze, and my heart had a rapid descent. What is it? Anna responded, her tone calm but tense, that he alleges you stole money from your joint accounts before transferring your assets. He did this before transferring your assets. Also, he is not alone himself. Co-plaintiffs are also involved. As I opened the file, my eyes fell upon a name that caused a chill to go down my spine. Ilya Morrow. Someone who was working with Ethan to bring me down was someone who was Ethan's accomplice. "My name is Ilya." When I asked, my voice was dry, and I could hardly hide the terror that was gnawing at me. With a gloomy expression on her face, Anna crossed her arms. Despite the fact that he is known for fabricating phony financial documents and has been linked to lawsuits, no one has been able to bring him to justice with proof. In the process of reading through Ethan's court documents, my level of rage increased with each page. I am not the creator of these transactions. My voice was shaking with anger as I exploded, the betrayal piercing me more deeply than it ever had before. I was anchored by Anna's composure as she nodded. We had a hunch about that, but things could grow really terrible if we don't take action quickly. I closed my fists tightly, and my nails dug into the palms of my hands. Is it possible to demonstrate that they are a fake? The sharpness of Anna's smile was like a ray of light shining through the darkness. We will not only be able to provide evidence of it, but we will also use it to our advantage. I spent the following week in a haze of dread and determination, checking my phone incessantly and jumping at every notification. She passed the case over to a forensic financial specialist, and I spent the week in both of these states. After a week had passed, Anna invited me to come into her office, and her eyes sparkled with an unusually high level of joy. Putting a file in front of me, she added, "You're going to find this to be very appealing." They didn't do it correctly. The transactions that Ethan asserts you went through, the timestamps on them date back to before your account was ever created. A glimmer of hope appeared to be bursting through the mist as I blinked, my heart beating rapidly. "What is it?" Anna made a tapping motion on the page, her finger moving across a catalog of bank statements. The paperwork for this account reflect transactions that occurred in May, despite the fact that it was opened in July. Due to their overconfidence, they failed to perform a second check. The burden of fear started to lighten, and as it did, a gradual and triumphant smile stretched across my face. The sound of my voice was thick with relief as I whispered that they had just destroyed themselves. Anna gave a little nod, her eyes blazing with the resolve to succeed. There is more to this than merely ignoring it. They are being sued for defamation and for presenting evidence that has been fabricated. When Anna finally filed the countersuit 3 days later, the words resounded with the sound of justice. Fraudulent evidence was willfully presented by defendant Ethan Reynolds and accomplice Ilya Morrow with the intention of smearing the reputation of plaintiff Laura Thompson and causing her financial injury. In addition to this, we requested recompense for the damages that they had inflicted, each of which was a brick in the wall of their overall failure. Not only was Ethan going to lose, but he was going to suffer for every betrayal and every moment that he had caused me to question my own abilities. I sat on my sofa that evening, savoring a rare moment of calm with a cup of coffee, and the warmth of the coffee helped me to bring myself back to earth. A call came in on my phone from an unknown number. As I responded, a rumbling voice could be heard coming from there. "You believe that you are so intelligent, don't you?" I made a smirk, my heart remaining stable in spite of his poison. "What's up, Ethan? Did you receive the notice from your attorney?" He screamed out in a voice that was dripping with desperation. "I swear, Laura, you are going to regret anything you do. You are completely unaware of the people you are harassing." I could feel the strength that I had battled for surging up inside of me as I leaned back, fearless. "Incorrect, Ethan. You are the one who is unaware of the people with whom you are tampering." As soon as the phone line was disconnected, I put the phone down with a smile that lingered on my lips. I was prepared for whatever he would throw next, since he was desperate and trying to find any way to survive. The atmosphere in the courtroom was heavy with nerves and expectation, and the atmosphere was electric. My eyes were fixed on Ethan, who was located on the other side of the room. He wore a fine suit, but his hands were gripping the table, and his knuckles were white, which was a clear indication of the anxiety that he was unable to conceal. While flipping through the documents, the judge maintained a steady voice that broke the silence within the courtroom. Mr. Reynolds' assertions that Ms. Thompson engaged in transactions that were impossible to carry out are supported by the facts. Upon hearing a whisper that reverberated throughout the room, I turned my attention to Ethan and noticed the twitch in his eye as well as the tightening of his jaw. He was aware of what was going to happen, and the dread that he displayed appeared to be a silent victory. The judge went on to finish. "It has been established by a forensic specialist that these transactions occurred prior to the plaintiff's account. Based on this evidence, it can be concluded that the documents that Mr. Reynolds and his friends submitted were falsified." I felt a wave of happiness when Anna let out a small giggle next to me. It was as if a fire that had been simmering for months was finally raging free without any interruptions. Using his gavel, the judge made a determined sound as he tapped it. "In light of the fact that the defendant fabricated evidence, the court has decided to reject all of Mr. Reynolds' claims and has ordered him to pay for the damages incurred by the plaintiff." Because Ethan's shoulders were sagging and his carefully created facade was falling apart, I was unable to conceal my smile. The judge raised his hand to quiet his attorney, who was standing there with a shaky voice before him. In addition, because Mr. Reynolds and his accomplice have knowingly provided fraudulent information, I have decided to order an investigation into the documents that they have provided. The realization that he had made a mistake caused Ethan to become completely immobile. At this point, the case was no longer merely a divorce. He faced actual legal repercussions, the kind that had the potential to completely derail his life. The gavel landed with a resounding and conclusive impact. Court has been postponed. An expression of triumph could be seen in Anna's eyes as she flashed a smile of triumph. "A knockout of the highest caliber," she murmured. As Ethan went out of the room, his steps were heavy and he lingered, the self-assurance that he had once worn like armor now diminished. I slowed down my pace, allowing him to sense my presence, and my calm triumph became more radiant with each step that I took further. His eyes were filled with a mixture of rage and defeat as he turned around to meet my gaze for the first time. My head was inclined to the side, and a gentle smile stretched across my face with it. "Are we finished with this, Ethan?" It was more audible than any words that he did not utter a single word. Nothing else could be said at that point. As I stood outside the courthouse, I inhaled deeply, and the crisp air washed away the stress that had built up in my body. It washed away the months of fear and betrayal that I had been experiencing. I had triumphed not just in a legal conflict, but also in a struggle against the one who had attempted to destroy me and take away everything that I had constructed. After a week had passed, Ethan's attorney made an attempt to negotiate a way out of the criminal probe, and their desperation was evident. Given that he had brought this upon himself, we declined. Furthermore, I had no intention of allowing him to avoid the repercussions that his actions would bring about. After a fortnight had passed, rumors began to spread like wildfire. The members of Ethan's team discussed his failed plot, which was an attempt to exploit the law for the purpose of gaining personal advantage. His work was terminated by his employer, and his reputation in the business of finance was shattered like glass. In order to pay for the legal bills, he sold his cherished sports car, and he also put his luxurious condominium up for sale, which served as a metaphor of the life he had recently lost. Everything that he had attempted to take away from me, he ultimately went on to lose himself. Every one of them lost a testament to his own arrogance. It was a beautiful evening when I was sitting in my apartment, sipping a glass of wine, and looking out at the city lights that were flashing before me. There was a message waiting for me on my phone from Anna. "Sincere congratulations, Laura. His fall from grace is thorough and utter." A grin appeared on my face as I put the phone down, and I felt the burden of the last few months fall off my shoulders. When Anna finally filed the countersuit 3 days later, the words resounded with the sound of justice. Fraudulent evidence was willfully presented by defendant Ethan Reynolds and accomplice Ilya Morrow with the intention of smearing the reputation of plaintiff Laura Thompson and causing her financial injury. In addition to this, we requested recompense for the damages that they had inflicted, each of which was a brick in the wall of their overall failure. Not only was Ethan going to lose, but he was going to suffer for every betrayal and every moment that he had caused me to question my own abilities. I sat on my sofa that evening, savoring a rare moment of calm with a cup of coffee, and the warmth of the coffee helped me to bring myself back to earth. A call came in on my phone from an unknown number. As I responded, a rumbling voice could be heard coming from there. "You believe that you are so intelligent, don't you?" I made a smirk, my heart remaining stable in spite of his poison. "What's up, Ethan? Did you receive the notice from your attorney?" He screamed out in a voice that was dripping with desperation. "I swear, Laura, you are going to regret anything you do. You are completely unaware of the people you are harassing." I could feel the strength that I had battled for surging up inside of me as I leaned back, fearless. "Incorrect, Ethan. You are the one who is unaware of the people with whom you are tampering." As soon as the phone line was disconnected, I put the phone down with a smile that lingered on my lips. I was prepared for whatever he would throw next, since he was desperate and trying to find any way to survive. The atmosphere in the courtroom was heavy with nerves and expectation, and the atmosphere was electric. My eyes were fixed on Ethan, who was located on the other side of the room. He wore a fine suit, but his hands were gripping the table, and his knuckles were white, which was a clear indication of the anxiety that he was unable to conceal. While flipping through the documents, the judge maintained a steady voice that broke the silence within the courtroom. Mr. Reynolds' assertions that Ms. Thompson engaged in transactions that were impossible to carry out are supported by the facts. Upon hearing a whisper that reverberated throughout the room, I turned my attention to Ethan and noticed the twitch in his eye as well as the tightening of his jaw. He was aware of what was going to happen, and the dread that he displayed appeared to be a silent victory. The judge went on to finish. "It has been established by a forensic specialist that these transactions occurred prior to the plaintiff's account. Based on this evidence, it can be concluded that the documents that Mr. Reynolds and his friends submitted were falsified." I felt a wave of happiness when Anna let out a small giggle next to me. It was as if a fire that had been simmering for months was finally raging free without any interruptions. Using his gavel, the judge made a determined sound as he tapped it. In light of the fact that the defendant fabricated evidence, the court has decided to reject all of Mr. Reynolds' claims and has ordered him to pay for the damages incurred by the plaintiff. Because Ethan's shoulders were sagging and his carefully created facade was falling apart, I was unable to conceal my smile. The judge raised his hand to quiet his attorney, who was standing there with a shaky voice before him. In addition, because Mr. Reynolds and his accomplice have knowingly provided fraudulent information, I have decided to order an investigation into the documents that they have provided. The realization that he had made a mistake caused Ethan to become completely immobile. At this point, the The case was no longer merely a divorce. He faced actual legal repercussions, the kind that had the potential to completely derail his life. The gavel landed with a resounding and conclusive impact. Court has been postponed. An expression of triumph could be seen in Anna's eyes as she flashed a smile of triumph. "A knockout of the highest caliber," she murmured. As Ethan went out of the room, his steps were heavy and he lingered, the self-assurance that he had once worn like armor now diminished. I slowed down my pace, allowing him to sense my presence, and my calm triumph became more radiant with each step that I took further. His eyes were filled with a mixture of rage and defeat as he turned around to meet my gaze for the first time. My head was inclined to the side, and a gentle smile stretched across my face with it. "Are we finished with this, Ethan?" It was more audible than any words that he did not utter a single word. Nothing else could be said at that point. As I stood outside the courthouse, I inhaled deeply, and the crisp air washed away the stress that had built up in my body. It washed away the months of fear and betrayal that I had been experiencing. I had triumphed not just in a legal conflict, but also in a struggle against the one who had attempted to destroy me and take away everything that I had constructed. After a week had passed, Ethan's attorney made an attempt to negotiate a way out of the criminal probe, and their desperation was evident. Given that he had brought this upon himself, we declined. Furthermore, I had no intention of allowing him to avoid the repercussions that his actions would bring about. After a fortnight had passed, rumors began to spread like wildfire. The members of Ethan's team discussed his failed plot, which was an attempt to exploit the law for the purpose of gaining personal advantage. His work was terminated by his employer, and his reputation in the business of finance was shattered like glass. In order to pay for the legal bills, he sold his cherished sports car, and he also put his luxurious condominium up for sale, which served as a metaphor of the life he had recently lost. Everything that he had attempted to take away from me, he ultimately went on to lose himself. Every one of them lost a testament to his own arrogance. It was a beautiful evening when I was sitting in my apartment, sipping a glass of wine, and looking out at the city lights that were flashing before me. There was a message waiting for me on my phone from Anna. "Sincere congratulations, Laura. His fall from grace is thorough and utter." A grin appeared on my face as I put the phone down, and I felt the burden of the last few months fall off my shoulders. My weight was lower than it had been in years. Although I still have the scars of betrayal, they no longer serve to define who I am. I found refuge in the peace and quiet of my apartment, a place where I was not subjected to Ethan's manipulative texts or his late-night phone calls that were filled with threats. Without the continual anxiety of what he would do next, I was finally able to breathe without fear weighing on my chest. This was the first time in months that I had been comfortable breathing. Obtaining victory had not been a simple task, despite the fact that it had required every ounce of my strength and every ounce of my courage. It was mine in every manner. While I was able to keep what was properly mine, Ethan had lost everything, and I emerged from the experience stronger than I had ever been before. On that particular evening, Anna insisted that we enjoy ourselves, her voice brimming with pride. My closest friends got together at a posh restaurant, and the sound of their laughter was like a bomb going off in my chest. The applause that greeted me as I walked in was heartfelt and sincere. It served as a reminder of the folks who had been there for me during the difficult times. Anna rose her glass, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "Thank you, Laura, for teaching us that we should never underestimate a woman who is smart and has a strategy." As I clinked my glass against hers, I couldn't help but laugh. The wine was bursting with the flavor of victory, and its silkiness was a striking contrast to the acridity of the past. Beatrice cocked her head to the side, her eyes glistening with compassion. "In light of the fact that he has nothing left, how does it feel?" When I finally found the words to describe what I was feeling, I put my glass down and smiled softly. I uttered the word relieving with a voice that was calm but filled with feeling. However, more than that, it gives me the feeling of freedom, as if I had reclaimed every aspect of myself that he attempted to take away from me. I felt a sense of grounding from Beatrice's empathy, which served as a reminder of the strength I had discovered in community. What comes after this? Her question was posed in a calm, yet inquisitive tone. I inhaled deeply as I watched the city's pulse hum beyond the window, pulsating with the possibility of something happening. With a smile that broke through, I responded that I was having a good time in life and that I would never again allow somebody to have that kind of influence over me. A celebration of not only my success, but also the resiliency that had brought me through was taking place in the room, and glasses were raised in agreement as shouts reverberated throughout the space. I went for a walk along the avenue by myself after the celebration, and the sound of my heels clicking softly on the stone pavement was really sweet. The city of Chicago looked like it was glowing beneath the night sky, with its golden lights bouncing off the streets to create a dreamlike glow that gave the impression of a promise. My skin was stroked by a brisk breeze in October, which was crisp and energizing. I pulled my coat tighter, not because I was afraid of the cold, but because I wanted to appreciate every instant of this freedom, this moment of being fully my own. The buzzing of my phone, with an unknown number flashing on the screen, indicated that this is not yet over. As I recognized Ethan's desperate attempt to regain control, I couldn't help but smirk. I tapped the number and pushed the block button without any hesitation, the action being the final one that was empowering. He had lost all of his influence over me and had no more control over the life that I had recovered. Observing the city's glittering horizon from my balcony, I could see the lights reaching out in front of me for an infinite amount of time. It was as if I had let go of a burden that I had carried for an excessively long time. The air felt cleaner and lighter. My adventure with Ethan had come to an end, and the final chapter had been written in my triumph. By regaining myself and having the resolve to rise above betrayal, I had won, not only legally or financially, but also by restoring my own sovereignty. There are some lessons that come at a terrible price and are taught in the most difficult manner. I used to think that Ethan was my partner, the person with whom I could construct a future, with whom I could share every secret and every aspiration. I chose to disregard the warning signs and the subtle changes in his behavior, because I believed that love and trust could triumph over everything. I had a mistake. The people we love the most are capable of betraying us in ways that are more painful than we could have ever imagined. It is a stab to the heart that they have taken. However, avoiding betrayal is not the definition of strength. They will take advantage of your trust and manipulate it for their own benefit, regardless of how careful you are, how loving you are, or how much you offer. It is what you do after the event that is important. Have you allowed it to bring you down, causing you to crumble beneath the weight of their lives? Or do you stand taller, smarter, and more receptive to others? I made a conscious decision to stand up for myself and to fight with a passion that I was unaware I possessed. My conflict with Ethan has been about more than just winning court battles. During that time, I was given a crash lesson in defending myself emotionally and financially. In the past, I believed that love meant giving up everything. There are no bounds or precautions with regard to the weaknesses of finance's dreams. However, I learned from experience that trusting someone involves preparation, particularly when it comes to matters of power and money. As a pawn in his game of manipulation, Ethan believed that I would be an easy target to manipulate. I was under a lot of pressure, and he planned, schemed, and believed that I would fail. He had a mistake. I managed to maintain my composure, devise a strategy, and strike back at the appropriate time, therefore turning his overconfidence against him. As a result of his hurry and his hubris, the holes in his lies were revealed. With the help of those flaws, I was able to bring him down and regain what was rightfully mine. As I sipped my wine, I allowed the faint astringency to remain on my tongue, serving as a constant reminder of the suffering that had helped me become more resilient. The lessons that I had learned from the past were etched into my very being. There was a future that I would own, one in which I would never again allow another else to determine my destiny. Not everything in life is fair. On occasion, the individuals in whom we place the greatest amount of faith are the ones who betray us, leaving a hurt that continues to linger. Nevertheless, Laura's story is about more than just a divorce. This demonstrates the strength of self-protection and preparation, as well as the tenacity of the human spirit. Never allow yourself to lose control of your life, especially in situations when your finances are interwoven with those of your partner. Maintain your composure, devise a strategy, and strike back at the appropriate moment when you are confronted with betrayal. The most significant win is not retribution. Reclaiming yourself and standing strong in the face of those who have attempted to bring you down is what it means to do this. What do you think about the trip that Laura takes, which includes both betrayal and triumph? Please leave your opinions in the comments below, and be sure to follow this page for other motivational tales of overcoming adversity and the indomitable spirit of the human race.